Welcome back to Community Conflict. I'm happy to have yet another alumni here with us today to talk about the work she has been doing since she graduated 8 years ago. And what I find fascinating is that at least one of you has indicated that the work she's doing in community conflict is exactly what you're interested in doing. Let me introduce Kathy to you. Wonderful that you could join us. Let me just say a couple of words and then I'm going to ask you some questions, turn it over to you, okay?
Great.
Now, what I'm going to say about community conflict is similar to what I started out with early in the course. As I reflect on community conflict, it includes everything in our lives, truly. And normally community conflict is thought of in terms of landlord-tenant, neighbor, police community. But given we live in communities, what a radical concept for Americans. But I live in a city, you all live in a city, a rural area, or the suburbs, and we all live in communities. And everything we do to help with conflict resolution with our communities helps our day-to-day life as communities. And you know, there is a pro bono, a nonprofit arm, a government arm that still provides mediation and NCRP to those who cannot afford the most expensive mediators and lawyers in the world. And any service like that I consider community conflict work.
Absolutely.
Because we are really building our community in a way that works. Mm-hmm. Kathy has been working with the Orange County Human Relations Commission for many years. Now I'm going to ask her if she would introduce herself, maybe a little bit about what drew you to NCRP, and then start to talk about what you've been doing since I last saw you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much
Yes.
for having me. Actually, the way that I came to NCRP was I actually was doing some work as a child advocate in abuse and neglect cases.
That's right, I remember that.
In Massachusetts,
Yes.
and was real frustrated with the system and these kids who would literally get lost in the system and stuck in foster homes when it wasn't that there wasn't a solution to the problem. It's that people weren't communicating effectively and finding that solution.
Yes.
And at that time, I learned about mediation, and I really had never heard of it before. And so
Okay.
I went and took a community mediation training and was fascinated by it. Started volunteering in a community mediation program that was focused in the courts. And
This was all in Massachusetts?
This was in Massachusetts.
Oh, wow, this is
Yeah.
great because I don't know if you realize, maybe you do, but Massachusetts along with Minnesota, where I first trained as a mediator, along with San Francisco, California, those were some of the early state pioneers in promoting mediation for
Right.
family-child conflict. So wonderful,
Yeah.
yes.
And so then I, started doing court mediation, small claims mediation, and
Why don't you briefly introduce, just in case a student has never experienced small claims court,
Okay.
mention what small claims means?
Well, that's really what our agency does is we provide mediators for the court in Orange County.
For the small claims
And
court.
a lot
yes.
of the bulk of the mediation that we do is in small claims court. And small claims court is where someone is looking for a lower amount of money. And usually or always attorneys can't be involved. They're restricted. They can't be involved in the cases. So it's actually
Well, the law in California says that lawyers can't be involved in small claims.
in small claims. Correct.
Interesting. I didn't know
Yeah,
that. I've never
right.
practiced in California.
Right.
Is it $5,000, $10,000?
It's gone up to $10,000.
Okay,
So at the
okay.
current time, it's a $10,000 limit.
So it
anything
could be
less
business,
than $10,000.
family, all sorts, full range.
Landlord, tenant, employee, employer. You get
Okay.
even sometimes you get all kinds of cases there. Consumer merchant, car accidents. Yeah. So there's a wide range
the whole
of
range
case
of
types.
community day-to-day kind
Right.
of conflicts.
Right.
So the court provides mediation to
Right.
anyone who files a small claim.
What they
Yes?
do is there's what's called the Dispute Resolution Programs Act, or DERPA as we refer
Yes.
to it, that funds these community mediation nonprofits in Orange County to provide the mediation services both directly to the courts and to the community itself.
Yes, and you know, this is one of the reasons I'm really happy that Kathy was able to join us, because to date our alumni have focused more on the community.
Right.
And it is the normal vision of community mediation. So I wanted you, especially those of you with this special interest, to know that it's not just that picture, it's also
Right.
the courts.
Right.
Okay, well, tell us, you know, what you've been doing while you've been working with this community mediation program.
So basically what we do is we have a staff member who supervises community volunteers who we train to attend court sessions and be
Okay.
available for mediation. So generally, if both parties are willing to attempt mediation, we take them out, they have a mediation session. If they can reach an agreement, we write that up and they bring it back to the court and the judge signs off on it. If they can't reach an agreement, they proceed with their court hearing.
How long do these mediations generally take?
Typically, I mean, it varies obviously case to case.
Yeah.
But in small claims court, I would say a typical mediation is probably 45 minutes to an hour and a half
Okay.
in terms of the actual mediation session.
Interesting.
When we're doing other types of cases, for example, civil harassment cases or family law cases, then they can often be much longer than that.
Okay, well, if you don't mind, we may go back and forth a bit, but
Sure.
I would love to ask you about the civil harassment cases and then the family cases.
Sure.
Both. Let's break it down.
Okay.
Can you tell us a bit of what's involved with a civil harassment case?
The civil harassment case is when somebody comes in and they are seeking a restraining order against somebody because they are having inappropriate contact, harassment, or threats of violence, or actual violence has occurred.
And this is both within a family and outside of a family, or does it generally involve non-family members?
Civil harassment is going to be non-family members.
Yes,
when there's
okay.
a family type of dynamic, generally it would be a domestic violence
Right,
restraining
exactly,
order request. And
yes.
falls into a whole nother court, which is the family court separate from the
Which
civil
we'll go
recourse.
to after civil
Right.
harassment.
Right.
Okay, so these are different courts.
Right.
Interesting. I hope you don't mind if some of the students are interested in connecting with you and even asking some more questions. I'm going to try to ask what I think they might be interested in. Do you mind if
Oh,
they
yeah,
ask?
I would love to.
Now,
and-
this is a possibility. If any of you now, it's too late for you to come up with your community internship for this class with Kathy. But if you're looking to do more internships as part of your NCRP education, this is definitely one of the most popular internships that our students have had in the past, and I can see why. Now, civil harassment would be like a stalker.
A stalker, or it could be a landlord-tenant
Oh, wow.
relationship
Okay,
where they're
threatening
not getting
violence,
along
yes.
in terms of how to share the house. So it could be, sometimes it's a boyfriend-girlfriend breakup
Sure,
situation.
sure.
We get a large number of neighbor-neighbor disputes where sometimes over boundaries, a tree that's growing over a fence, or barking dogs.
Oh yeah,
or-
those are common. If you haven't done community mediation, you have to do at least one barking dog
Right,
dispute,
right.
yes. These are I think what I'm hearing, civil harassment is a nice diplomatic way of saying nasty conflicts, community conflicts. This is when it
Right.
gets destructive. And I don't know if any of you have taken mediation with me and had the pig dispute, the pet pig dispute, these kind of, yes,
Right,
okay.
right.
Interesting. And then you also have the family court.
Right.
Okay, let's go there and talk a little bit about what's involved with the family court.
So-
these are generally lower income clients?
It's actually open to anybody who has a case in the family court. We are
Wow.
there at the courthouse. The judge calls his calendar. The judge makes a determination of whether or not he thinks a case would benefit from the possibility of mediation. If so, he sends them out to talk talk to us about what our program is and decide if they want to mediate.
Does the court have a list of private mediators as well if somebody wants to consider other mediators? Because I've been part of that list in a different state.
In Orange County, there actually is a mediator panel in the civil court. There is not a family law mediator panel that's affiliated with the courts.
Well, maybe I have some public policy work to do in Orange County, because I would say family mediations and civil harassment are some of the most challenging mediations I've done in my practice. It takes the highest level of skill. Interesting that Orange County, it just has, I think it's wonderful, don't get me wrong, that they have a nonprofit option for families. But given how some, and I can think of the most wealthy couples I've worked with, how contentious and nasty and potentially violent they can be, that's tough work.
And the court, you know, in their information that they provide to litigants, they provide information about private mediation. So it's an option. They just don't have a roster of mediators that they refer to.
They haven't vetted the people they think are the most qualified. That's what some courts do throughout the country. They look at, have they had this training? Do they have this kind of ethical training? I must say, generally, they preference lawyer mediators given the court connection, so it's not always the best. Interesting.
Probably the state that I see being the most advanced in that area is Florida. Florida really has a
they
very
have
strong,
certification.
and almost mandatory mediation in family court.
Well, but okay, that's an interesting discussion to have that I think I'll wait until we have another time. Yeah, because I'm not a pro-certification person, but I appreciate your perspective. I mean, I want to go back, though, to family cases.
I was just referring to the fact that they actually have mediation available, and a large number of their cases are utilizing it as a part of the normal court process.
Okay. Well, I love what San Francisco has done. We might actually be on the same page. I do believe mediation should be at the heart, especially when parents are going to continue parenting post-divorce.
Well, and there is mandatory mediation in the state of California that is for child and custody mediation, where there are actually court employees who are the mediators, and all counties in California have that mandatory mediation.
And some of our alumni have been hired to be those employees. Thank you for mentioning that government entity. Now, I'm not in my ethics class to talk about the mandatory piece, right? But I know at least one of my students right now would like to hear more about what kind of cases do you generally see coming through the family court that are mediated?
So when we do mediation, we do all issues. They're whatever the judge sends them out, because we practice a facilitative style of mediation.
Yes.
So
I would hope.
So really, what we're focusing on in the mediation is the communication dynamic.
Yes.
And so that's appropriate for basically any conflict. So we do property division issues, we do custody and visitation, we do support.
Child support,
do sometimes
generally.
Contempt cases will be referred out to
where
mediation.
They have disregarded the previously mediated agreement, the court order. Yes, which frankly, that's part of why I see these as some of the toughest cases. More likely to see it here than in any other arena that I've worked in. It's amazing to me how parents can stay enmeshed in the worst of conflict, right? And the poor children, that's a whole,
to be frank, I feel like with my experience, that we've been there for about 6 years, is that the court process just exacerbates it.
I agree.
You know,
well, unless there's abuse. I would say there are times, and you know, you were an advocate for children who truly had been abused. There are some severe cases where a good family court judge is vital, but they are so rare compared to the norm going through our system. And so what you're telling us is you see this court as a wonderful opportunity to educate the parents, give them some new skills, maybe some tools that hopefully they can take out of the court, the mediation, and use in parenting their children.
Right.
Yeah, what a great service.
Yeah, and just giving them back control of the case in terms of the
Yes.
outcomes.
Oh, no, and the creative ways of meeting the needs of their children, meeting their own needs. Yes, I'm very much with you here. Family mediation is one of the, well, actually divorce, litigated divorce is one of the areas where even lawyers, litigators said, there's got to be better ways. It's really, it really is where we started to see an interest in mediation start to grow in this country and then spread to other arenas. Okay, let's assume some of our students are saying, wow, this is the internship I want before I graduate from NCRP. What would they likely be? Give us a sense of some of the training, because you do a 40-hour, I imagine.
Right, depending on what their training in mediation already is. Sometimes if somebody's already had mediation-specific training, for example, taking the mediation course here at Dominguez Hills, would meet that 40-hour training,
it does.
or most of it, and we would augment with the things that needed to be added to it. So they wouldn't even necessarily have to take the 40-hour training.
Well, you know, at least when I teach it, and everyone has academic freedom to teach their course, how they teach it, so I'm not imposing. But the DERPA requirements are in there.
Right.
I cover the ethics and all. So what, so 40-hour training.
And so that's to come into the program. And we do have differences, I want to be clear about, working in our civil program versus our family program.
Why don't we, let's talk about a little bit of the difference. If they were choosing between the two, what are some of the differences?
For the civil program, it's really minimal requirements. They have to have had the 40-hour training, and then basically they come in, they start shadowing somebody at the court. We do observation and then gradually work up to doing co-mediation. And then going into more of a lead role with a strong co-mediator who's there for support as needed.
Yeah, and giving feedback and having troubleshooting. This is the kind of mentoring I described when I was a mediator mentor in Boulder at the Community Mediation Center. I'm hoping each of our students finds a place where they can, because no one can really learn mediation.
Unless you're doing it.
Unless you're doing it with someone, a mentor you really respect, you feel safe and comfortable with,
Right.
Yeah, you learn by doing.
Right.
Yes.
And that's what happens with the people who come into our program, is that they have an opportunity not just to work with a mentor, but to be exposed to multiple other mediators and their styles and their approaches. And then gradually, you know, you kind of see what everybody else is doing, and then you figure out what really works with your personality.
Exactly,
and
your
approach.
strengths and weaknesses.
And then, you know, and there's the freedom to become that best mediator that you can be.
Nice.
So it's,
how long do they volunteer with you if it's a minimum commitment?
our minimum commitment is, in an internship, it's 120 hours.
Okay, that's a pretty standard internship. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, so they work that out in different ways with you.
Right.
When you say civil side family, that includes the harassment as well as small claims?
In civil court, we do small claims, unlawful detainer, evictions.
Right.
And civil harassment are the primary types of mediated cases that we do in the civil court.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so those are the requirements, civil. Let's go over to family.
So family, because of the nature of the cases and the complexity, not just the legal aspects of working with a divorce, as well as the fact that you're generally working with very high conflict people many times, we have much higher standards. They have to take a 40-hour divorce mediation training, which we offer, or if they've had that somewhere else, in addition to a basic mediation training.
Yeah, yeah.
And then before they can actually get involved in our program, they have to be an experienced mediator. We require that they already have done 25 mediations.
Okay, I was just going to ask, that's your standard 25 mediations.
In order to qualify to come and be involved in learning in the family court program.
So some of your mediators might start in civil, and after 25 mediations, they're welcome to start shadowing, learning. I must say the opportunity to co-mediate is an invaluable one.
Right.
I've co-mediated much throughout my career. I don't talk about it much because I'm talking about whatever I'm teaching, but that's a process of learning what works, what doesn't work, not only for yourself,
Right.
for the mediation, but for the party. So
Right.
that's a really special opportunity you provide.
And it is, and it's a challenge, and I have to say that when I first started this program, I worked with a co-coordinator, and we actually had very different mediation styles. He was an attorney, and
a male, and we'll not go there right now,
well,
but
and
we
actually,
can imagine.
the roles were kind of reversed. He was much more easygoing than I was.
Oh, you were more directive
Yes.
and authoritarian. Okay,
Yes.
I stand corrected here, yes.
But the point was that our styles were so different, and it really took us a little bit of time to learn to work together. But I think ultimately we were an incredible team.
An incredible
because
team.
We brought different strengths to the table.
Well, no, and parties will notice those differences. And when I've done my human relations community disputes, which is a whole room full of very
Right.
angry people and government officials, who my co-mediators are is as important as what happens,
Right.
because it's such a symbol to the parties that you're actually emulating what you're
Right.
helping them do with each other. Yes,
Yeah.
it's a great.
Yeah.
It's very rare. Students will often say, now my practice is part-time at the moment. It hasn't been full-time for a long time. I've been traveling around the world and doing all these cool things. But students will say, when you do mediate, can I sit in and observe? And because of confidentiality and because of the nature of agreements with parties, parties rarely give permission for outsiders to observe a mediation. I would love to have all of you come and observe, but a party is already really hesitant about trusting. You can imagine, put yourself in their shoes. So, and that is true for most of the gifted mediators I know throughout the United States and in the Los Angeles area. Lee J. Berman is one of the few
Right.
that allows for an internship where you can sit in and observe a gifted mediator in action. So I'm telling you all of this to reinforce what a special opportunity this would be, or a similar program would
Right.
be for those of you really intent on learning to mediate
Right.
and becoming comfortable in your own skin as a mediator. Yes.
Yeah, because it's a very intimidating feeling when you
Yes.
first start out.
Oh, with conflict, yes.
And you have to start somewhere. And this is a very safe environment because there's so much support built in.
Yes, and
to
you
it.
have a lead seasoned person
Right.
at first. So if you're paralyzed by the fact, because students will often come to me their second year in our program and go, whoa, I just figured out I signed on to work with angry, conflicted people. Am I crazy? What am I doing? And I'm like, no, we need you.
Right.
But that doesn't mean it's easy to feel comfortable when someone attacks you, when they lose their temper. Having a strong lead person while you're learning what works for you is invaluable. Yes.
Definitely.
So we only have a few minutes left, and I really appreciate, we could probably talk much more about details. Just in reflection over your time doing this work, having graduated from our program, anything else you would like to say to our current students about the work you're doing, our field, our program, your choice of how we're
Okay.
going to close?
Well, I think what I'd like to say is, that the field is evolving. It's evolving slowly.
Yes.
I think one of the challenges is for people to find that niche out there where mediation is really being used. And
Yes.
I'm starting to see more opportunities for mediators.
They're
through-
actually everywhere, but here's something
Orange
I'll
County.
add. In Orange County, California, that you're an expert on, and I have no idea really.
Yeah.
Except for your Human Relations Commission, I don't have that much engagement. I'm
Right.
much more of a Los Angeles County person in terms of my work, consulting work. But I will say, anytime any of you are wondering about possibilities, professional associations, ways that mediation is being used, feel free to approach me or one of your faculty, because you know, the ONSPUD's position is
Right.
one, organizational and now classical more and more. Actually, federal agencies have a lot of mediation, but usually we don't know about it unless we're one of the parties that we get engaged. So feel free to approach our new director, myself. We've been doing this a long time, and we're likely to be able to introduce you to the Cathys, right? Yes, but I agree with you. Finding your niche as a mediator, it's really a lifelong endeavor, and it takes learning what your strengths are and how parties respond to you. Now, I tend to be trusted by people who don't trust each other, like parents in family. So that served me well, and my lawyer friends went, oh, she can handle the most volatile. Because they will listen to her, they will respect her, right? You must have had some of those moments. I mean, you're doing a lot of training. Tell us, when you were sort of finding your way as a mediator, what did you see in terms of your strengths? What was that fit for you?
Well, I think, you know, a lot of it is really what I learned, and I think I have evolved in terms of not being so directive. It is really more sitting back and listening and being present. And really tuning in on the parties and focusing on what is important to them and helping them share that with each other. And
well, as your comfort zone, as your anxiety decreased, no, every mediator has been there. You had that space open up to hear the parties, to see them, and you learned the power of deep listening, of accurate understanding. That's a gift to anyone I've worked with. I have never had somebody say, what are you doing listening to me, right? No, they're actually so amazed that somebody took the time to be so present with them. Yes. Yeah.
You know, and that's where you get meaningful resolutions, because if you're trying to address your agenda, then that's not necessarily what's best for them. So
no, and you miss out on who they are.
Right.
Now, I've never been a directive person. You know, that's just not my style. Most of you haven't met me. Kathy knows that I'm over 6 foot tall. So I learned late in life that I could be intimidating to those not used to tall women, tall people. But in my world, I was always, it's okay, what do you want? That kind of thing. And that kind of facilitative approach, I have found works all around the world. People really respect it. It is, once again, a rare gift that we give people. Where else do people give that kind of listening, attention, respect, right? Yeah. So you found your niche.
Yes,
it shows. It's really nice. Now, I would encourage you, we do have a couple of minutes we can take, but I would encourage you, because I know at least one of you really wants to follow in Kathy's footsteps, hopes that this is his niche. I would encourage you to write me so I can introduce you via email, so you can talk by phone or maybe even go to Orange County. I do know the beaches of Orange County. I love the beaches of Orange County. You know, I was in Berkeley, California years ago, and students from Orange County would say, oh, you don't want to go to Orange County. And I'm like, are you kidding? It's paradise when you visit, right? Yeah, it's your home. Thank you again. I'm very happy to see how things have worked out so well for another one of our alum. Okay, thank you for joining us this week. See you soon. Have a great week.